The galactic stage, the vast expanse of the Milky Way, had long been a theater of grand civilizations, epic conflicts, and uneasy alliances. For millennia, countless species had risen and fallen, their legacies etched into the cosmic tapestry. But none had ever witnessed anything quite like the humans. In the year 2157, humanity burst onto the galactic stage with all the subtlety of a supernova. Their arrival sent shockwaves through the established order, leaving the elder races reeling in disbelief. How could such a young species have mastered faster-than-light travel so quickly? The answer, as the galaxy would soon learn, lay in humanity's greatest strength, their relentless drive to overcome any obstacle. Amidst the swirling eddies of interstellar politics, one power stood paramount: the Zalthori Imperium. For over 10,000 years, these silicon-based lifeforms had ruled vast swaths of the galaxy with an iron fist. Their crystalline bodies housed minds of cold, ruthless logic, and their empire was built on the broken backs of 100 subjugated races. Ambassador Lyra Chen stood before the curved windows of Harmony Station, Earth's first extraterrestrial diplomatic outpost. Her dark eyes scanned the star-studded void, searching for any sign of the Zalthori delegation. They were late, a calculated insult, no doubt. Any update from long-range sensors, ARIA? Lyra asked, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her gut. The station's AI responded in soothing tones. Negative, Ambassador. No sign of Zalthori vessels within a light year of our position. Lyra nodded, unsurprised. In the 6 months since humanity's dramatic entrance into galactic society, the Zalthori had made their disdain for the upstart apes abundantly clear. This meeting, the first official diplomatic contact between humans and the Imperium, was a grudging concession, granted only after Earth's military had bloodied the nose of a Zalthori scouting fleet. The memory of that encounter brought a grim smile to Lyra's face. The Zalthori had expected an easy conquest, a primitive species to add to their collection of slaves. Instead, they'd found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned by ships that, by galactic standards, should have been hopelessly outclassed. It was a lesson the Imperium was still struggling to comprehend. A flash of light in the distance caught Lyra's attention. She squinted, then felt her heart rate quicken as the telltale distortion of a ship dropping out of FTL rippled across the stars. ARA, alert the station. Our guests have arrived. As klaxons sounded throughout Harmony Station, Lyra took a deep breath, centering herself. The next few hours would determine the course of human history, perhaps the fate of the entire galaxy. The Zalthori ship that emerged from FTL was a behemoth, easily dwarfing Harmony Station. Its crystalline surface refracted starlight in dazzling patterns, a display of beauty that belied the brutal nature of its creators. Ambassador, Aria's voice interrupted Lyra's contemplation. I'm receiving a transmission from the Zalthori vessel. Put it through, Lyra commanded, straightening her posture and adopting the mask of cool professionalism that had served her so well in Earth's cutthroat political arena. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a being that seemed more sculpture than creature. The Zalthori emissary's body was a latticework of translucent crystal, pulsing with internal light. Its face was a featureless plane, save for 3 glowing orbs arranged in a triangle. Greetings, creature of flesh. The Zalthori's voice resonated through the chamber, a sound like wind through crystal chimes. I am Vexalia, emissary of the Eternal Imperium. We have deigned to grant you this audience. Be grateful for our magnanimity. Lyra bit back a sharp retort, reminding herself of the stakes. Emissary Vexalia, on behalf of the United Earth Government, I welcome you to Harmony Station. We look forward to productive discussions that will lay the foundation for peaceful coexistence between our peoples. The Zalthori's central orb pulsed brightly. A gesture Lyra's briefing had informed her indicated amusement or derision. Peaceful coexistence. Your naivety would be charming if it weren't so pathetic. The galaxy operates on one immutable law: The strong rule, and the weak serve. Your species will learn this lesson, one way or another. Lyra's fingers curled into fists at her sides, but her voice remained level. Perhaps it is you who has something to learn. Emissary. Humanity has faced extinction-level threats since our infancy. We've stared into the abyss and clawed our way back from the brink more times than I can count. We will not bow, we will not break, and we most certainly will not serve. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then, to Lyra's surprise, the Zalthori emitted a sound like tinkling glass. Laughter. "Oh, this will be entertaining," Vexalia said. "Very well, human. We shall play this game of diplomacy. But know this, when the Imperium tires of your prattle, we will crush your civilization and reduce your homeworld to ash." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Lyra alone with the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. "Erae," she said softly, "inform the station's security team. The Zalthori will be docking shortly." She paused, then added, "And patch me through to Earth. The President needs to know. We're in for one hell of a fight." As Lyra turned back to the window, watching the massive Zalthori ship approach, she couldn't help but feel a spark of excitement beneath the fear and tension. Humanity had spent its entire existence pushing boundaries, defying odds, and achieving the impossible. Now they would do it on a galactic scale. The game was afoot, and Lyra Chen, representing the indomitable spirit of humanity, was ready to play. First contact gone wrong. The tension aboard the UES Intrepid was palpable as the exploration fleet pushed deeper into uncharted space. Captain Sarah Hawkins stood on the bridge, her weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. They were far beyond the safety of human-controlled space, seeking new worlds, new resources, and perhaps even new allies. "Status report," Hawkins barked, her eyes never leaving the main view screen. Lieutenant Commander Raj Patel, her second-in-command, responded crisply, "All systems nominal, Captain. Long-range sensors are picking up some unusual energy signatures about 2 light-years out. Could be worth investigating." Hawkins nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. This was why they were out here, to chase the unknown, to push the boundaries of human knowledge. "Set a course, Mr. Patel. Let's see what we found." As the fleet adjusted its trajectory, none aboard could have imagined the powder keg they were about to ignite. Hours later, the source of the energy signatures came into view. A massive structure hung in space, its architecture alien and imposing. Crystalline spires jutted out at odd angles, refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. "My God," Hawkins breathed, leaning forward in her chair. "What is that thing?" Before anyone could respond, the ship's eye chimed in, its voice tinged with urgency. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple vessels decloaking around the structure. Configuration matches known Zalthori designs." Hawkins felt her blood run cold. The Zalthori, humanity's first, and so far most dangerous, extraterrestrial adversary. Red alert. Shields up, weapons hot. Comms, hail those ships immediately. The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as the crew rushed to battle stations. On the view screen, sleek, crystalline ships shimmered into view, their weapons already charged and aimed at the human fleet. "This is Captain Sarah Hawkins of the United Earth Ship Intrepid," Hawkins announced, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We come in peace and wish to avoid any conflict. Please respond." For a tense moment, there was only silence. Then, a harsh, grating voice filled the bridge. "Peace. You invade our sovereign territory and speak of peace. Your audacity knows no bounds, flesh creatures." Hawkins gritted her teeth. This was spiraling out of control fast. "We had no knowledge this area was claimed. We're on a mission of peaceful exploration. If we've trespassed, we apologize and will withdraw immediately." The Zalthori commander's laughter was like breaking glass. "Withdraw? Oh no, little humans. You've stumbled upon one of our most sacred sites. The only withdrawal you'll be making is from existence itself." Before Hawkins could respond, the view screen lit up with weapons fire. The Zalthori fleet had opened fire without warning, their energy beams slamming into the human ship's shields. "Evasive maneuvers," Hawkins shouted, gripping her armrests as the Intrepid shuddered under the assault. "Return fire, target their weapon systems only." What followed was a ballet of destruction that would be remembered for generations. The human ships, though outnumbered and outgunned, displayed a level of tactical flexibility that caught the Zalthori completely off guard. Hawkins' voice rang out over the chaos, coordinating the fleet's movements with a precision that bordered on precognition. "Artemis, Orion, execute pincer maneuver Delta. Hermes, use the asteroid field for cover and flank their left wing." The Zalthori, accustomed to opponents that either fled in terror or fought with predictable desperation, found themselves facing an enemy that adapted to their tactics in real time. Human ships danced through the battlefield, their smaller size and superior maneuverability allowing them to evade the worst of the Zalthori barrage, while landing precision strikes of their own. Hours passed, and the tide of battle began to turn. The Zalthori's numerical advantage was slowly whittled away by the humans' unconventional tactics and sheer determination. On the bridge of the Intrepid, now scared and dimly lit by emergency power, Captain Hawkins allowed herself a grim smile. They were bloodied, but unbowed. Status report. Patel, his uniform singed and face streaked with sweat, responded, "We've lost the Hermes and the Artemis is dead in the water, but the rest of the fleet is still operational. Zalthori forces are down to 3 ships, and they're in bad shape." Hawkins nodded, her mind racing. They'd proven they could hold their own, but this conflict needed to end before it escalated further. "Comms, hail the Zalthori flagship." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the Zalthori commander. Its crystalline form was cracked in several places, leaking a luminescent fluid. "What trickery is this?" it demanded, its voice wavering. "How can primitive creatures like you stand against the might of the Imperium?" Hawkins stood, her posture straight despite the exhaustion weighing on her. "We are not primitive, and we are not creatures to be underestimated. This battle has proven that. Now, I offer you a choice. Withdraw your forces, and we'll do the same. This doesn't have to end in more bloodshed." The Zalthori commander's eye analogues pulsed rapidly, a sign of intense internal debate. Finally, it spoke, its tone a mixture of rage and grudging respect. You dare to offer us mercy after the damage you've inflicted." "It's not mercy," Hawkins replied firmly. "It's pragmatism. Neither of us can afford to continue this fight. So let's end it, here and now." For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, to the shock of everyone on the bridge, the Zalthori commander inclined its crystalline head in what could only be a nod. "Very well, human. We will withdraw. But know this, the Imperium does not forget, and it does not forgive. This anomaly will be reported to our highest authorities. Prepare yourselves." As the remaining Zalthori ships limped away, a ragged cheer went up on the Intrepid's bridge. They had done the impossible, faced down the terror of the galaxy and emerged victorious. But Captain Hawkins felt no elation. As she stared out at the star-strewn void, she knew that this was only the beginning. They had won the battle, but in doing so, they might have started a war. "Mr. Patel," she said softly, "set a course for Earth. We need to report this to High Command immediately." As the battered human fleet turned for home, news of their incredible stand against the Zalthori began to spread. Across the galaxy, oppressed species looked to the stars with new hope in their hearts. For the first time in millennia, someone had stood up to the Imperium and survived. The humans were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. The negotiation gambit, the grand chamber of the United Earth Council, buzzed with tension. Representatives from every nation on Earth, along with delegates from a handful of human colonies, sat in tiered rows facing a central podium. At that podium stood Admiral Elena Volkov, her weathered face set in grim lines as she addressed the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice cutting through the murmurs, "the situation is grave. The Zalthori Imperium has issued an ultimatum. Surrender unconditionally, or face total annihilation." A wave of gasps and angry exclamations swept through the chamber. Admiral Volkov raised a hand, calling for silence. "I know this news is shocking, but we must remain calm and united. Our victory against their scouting fleet, while impressive, has only served to enrage them. They're amassing a force unlike anything we've ever seen." Councillor John Wei of the Chinese Federation leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What are our options, Admiral? Surely we can't just roll over and submit to these aliens." Volkov nodded solemnly. "You're right, Counselor. Submission is not an option. But neither is all-out war, at least not yet. We're outgunned and outmatched in terms of sheer firepower and numbers. We need time to prepare, to build up our defenses and expand our fleet. So what do you propose?" This from Councillor Amara Okafor of the African Union, her voice tinged with skepticism. A ghost of a smile played across Volkov's lips. "We do something the Zalthori would never expect. We negotiate." The chamber erupted into chaos. Shouts of appeasement and cowardice mingled with more measured calls for explanation. Volkov waited patiently for the furor to die down before continuing. "I know how this sounds," she said, her voice low but carrying to every corner of the room. "But hear me out. The Zalthori, for all their power, have a critical weakness: their arrogance. They believe us to be primitive, easily cowed. By offering to negotiate, we play into that perception while buying ourselves precious time." Slowly, understanding began to dawn on the faces of the assembled leaders. Councillor Hiroki Tanaka of Japan leaned forward, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. "A clever gambit, Admiral. But who would we send to these negotiations?" Volkov's gaze swept the room, settling on a figure seated in the back row. "We send the best diplomatic mind humanity has to offer. We send Ambassador Lyra Chen." All eyes turned to Lyra, who stood slowly, her face a mask of calm determination. "I accept this mission," she said, her voice steady. "But I'll need a team. The brightest minds in diplomacy, psychology, and alien culture we can muster." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity, as Earth's military leaders scrambled to bolster defenses and accelerate weapons development. Lyra assembled her team. Dr. Alexander Volkov, the Admiral's younger brother and a renowned psychologist. Dr. Zara Amare, an expert in game theory and strategic negotiations. And rounding out the core group, Major Jack Harper, a seasoned Special Forces operator with a gift for reading people and aliens. As their ship, the aptly named UES Olive Branch, prepared for departure, Lyra gathered her team for a final briefing. "Make no mistake," she said, looking each of them in the eye. "This is likely to be the most challenging assignment of our lives. The fate of our entire species may rest on the outcome of these talks." Dr. Amari, her dark eyes intense, leaned forward. "Ambassador, with all due respect, how can we hope to negotiate with a species that sees us as little more than insects?" Lyra's smile was razor-sharp. "By using that very perception against them, Doctor. The Zalthori think us primitive, yes, but also unpredictable. We'll use that unpredictability to keep them off balance, to make them question their assumptions about us." Major Harper, his scared face thoughtful, nodded slowly. "Psychological warfare on a galactic scale. I like it." As the olive branch slipped into FTL, carrying humanity's hopes with it, news of the impending negotiations spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Oppressed species watched with bated breath, scarcely daring to hope that someone might finally stand up to the Zalthori Imperium. The journey to the neutral meeting ground, a long-abandoned space station in a system equidistant from Earth and the Zalthori homeworld, took several days. Lyra used every moment to prepare, drilling her team on Zalfori culture, rehearsing potential scenarios, and fine-tuning their strategy. Finally, the ancient station loomed before them, a relic of some long-forgotten civilization. As they docked, Lyra felt a mix of trepidation and excitement coursing through her veins. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's place in the cosmos. The Zalfori delegation was already waiting when Lyra and her team entered the cavernous negotiation chamber. The aliens' crystalline forms seemed to pulse with barely contained disdain. "Greetings, creatures of flesh," the lead Zalfori intoned, its voice like grinding glass. "We are surprised you had the courage to come." Lyra stepped forward, her posture relaxed but alert. "Courage? No, esteemed representatives of the Imperium. We simply saw an opportunity for dialogue and seized it. After all, is that not the mark of an advanced civilization?" The Zalfori leader's eye analogues flickered. A sign of surprise, Lyra knew from her briefings. "You speak of advancement. Your species is barely out of its cradle. What could you possibly offer the Imperium?" Lyra's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps more than you might think. Shall we begin?" As both delegations took their seats, the air crackled with tension and possibility. Lyra knew that every word, every gesture in the coming days would be crucial. The Zalfori had come expecting an easy victory, a chance to humiliate the upstart humans before crushing them. Instead, they were about to get the diplomatic equivalent of a guerrilla war. Lyra leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Now then, honored representatives of the Zalfori Imperium, let's talk about the future, not just of our two species, but of the entire galaxy." The negotiations had begun, and with them, a new chapter in galactic history. Whether it would be a chapter of peace or war, of cooperation or conflict, remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: humanity was here to stay, and the universe would never be the same. Battle of wits and will. The ancient space station creaked and groaned, as if straining under the weight of the historic negotiations taking place within its walls. In the cavernous chamber that served as the neutral ground between humanity and the Zalfori Imperium, Ambassador Lyra Chen sat across from the crystalline form of High Executor SCiFi, the leader of the Zalfori delegation. 3 days had passed since the talks began, and the atmosphere was charged with a mixture of tension, frustration, and grudging respect. The Zalfori had come expecting to dictate terms to a primitive species. Instead, they found themselves locked in a battle of wits with opponents who refused to be cowed or outmaneuvered. "Let us review our position once more," SCiFi said, its voice like shards of glass grinding together. "The Imperium demands full access to Earth's resources, the integration of your military forces into our own, and the implementation of Zalfori governance on all human worlds." Lyra leaned back in her chair, her expression calm, but her eyes sharp. "And as we've stated before, those terms are unacceptable. Humanity will not surrender its sovereignty or its resources. We came here to negotiate a peaceful coexistence, not to submit to conquest." The Zalfori leader's crystalline form pulsed with barely contained fury. "You speak of peaceful coexistence, yet your ships attacked our sacred outpost. Your very existence threatens the order we have maintained for millennia." Dr. Alexander Volkov, seated to Lyra's right, spoke up, his voice measured. "With respect, High Executor, that attack was a misunderstanding born of lack of communication. Had your forces not opened fire without warning, the situation could have been resolved peacefully." SCiFi turned its attention to the xenopsychologist, eye analogues flickering. "You expect us to believe that your incursion into our territory was mere happenstance. Your lies are as transparent as they are insulting." Lyra raised a hand, her voice cutting through the rising tension. "Perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong angle. Instead of focusing on past grievances, let's look to the future. What does the Imperium truly hope to gain from this conflict?" The question seemed to catch the Zalfori off guard. For a moment, silence reigned in the chamber. Then, surprisingly, it was one of the junior Zalfori delegates who spoke up. "Stability. The young alien said, its voice softer than its elders. The Imperium seeks to maintain the galactic order that has prevented large-scale wars for thousands of years. Lyra nodded, a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. And you believe that our emergence as a spacefaring race threatens that stability? SCiFi interjected, its tone dismissive. Your kind are chaotic, unpredictable. You lack the discipline and unity that true civilization requires. It was Dr. Zora Ameri who responded, her expertise in game theory coming to the fore. But isn't it precisely that adaptability, that chaos, as you call it, that allowed us to hold our own against your advanced fleet? Perhaps what you see as a threat could be an asset. The Zalthori delegates conferred among themselves, their crystalline bodies chiming softly as they communicated in frequencies beyond human hearing. Lyra exchanged glances with her team, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. They were making progress, however slowly. As the hours wore on, the negotiations took on a rhythm of their own. For every demand the Zalthori made, the humans had a counter-proposal, where the aliens expected capitulation. They found resilience. When they tried to intimidate, they were met with reason and, occasionally, humor. Major Jack Harper, who had been silent for much of the proceedings, suddenly leaned forward. You know, there's something I've been wondering, High Executor. In all your years of conquest, have you ever encountered a species that actually improved after being subjugated? The question hung in the air, bold and unexpected. SCiFi seemed to bristle, its crystalline form vibrating with indignation. Improvement is irrelevant. Order is what matters. Lyra seized on the opening. But what if there was a way to maintain order without subjugation? What if humanity could offer the Imperium something it's never had before? An ally, rather than a subject. The idea seemed to stun the Zalthori delegation into silence. For beings used to thinking in terms of domination and submission, the concept of true alliance was almost incomprehensible. As the talks stretched into their second week, a subtle shift began to occur. The Zalthori, initially dismissive and hostile, started to show signs of curiosity. They asked questions about human culture, about Earth's history of overcoming adversity. In turn, the human delegation learned more about the complex hierarchies and ancient traditions that governed Zalthori society. It was during one of these cultural exchanges that a breakthrough finally came. Lyra had been explaining the human concept of win-win negotiations when she noticed a change in SCiFi's demeanor. You truly believe it's possible for both parties to benefit from an agreement? The High Executor asked, its tone a mixture of disbelief and fascination. Lyra nodded, seizing the moment. Not only possible but preferable. Imagine a galaxy where the Zalthori Imperium and humanity worked together. Your experience and our innovation. Your stability and our adaptability. We could face challenges neither of us could overcome alone. For the first time since the negotiations began, SCiFi's crystalline form seemed to soften, its harsh edges becoming less pronounced. An intriguing concept, but how can we trust that your kind would honor such an arrangement? It was at this moment that Lyra played her final card. She stood, her posture straight and proud. Because, High Executor, if there's one thing you should understand about humans, it's this. We keep our promises. When we commit to something, we see it through, no matter the cost. It's what allowed us to survive on our harsh homeworld, to reach the stars despite all odds. And it's what will make us the most valuable allies the Imperium has ever known, if you're willing to take that chance. The chamber fell silent, the weight of Lyra's words hanging in the air. The Zalthori delegates conferred once more, but this time there was an energy to their discussion that hadn't been present before. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, SCiFi turned back to the human delegation. Its voice, when it spoke, held a note of something almost like respect. Ambassador Chen, you and your people have proven to be more than we anticipated. Perhaps there is wisdom in exploring this concept of alliance. We propose a probationary period, during which our civilizations can work together on joint projects. If this proves successful, we may consider a more formal arrangement." Lyra's heart soared, but she kept her expression neutral. "That seems like a reasonable starting point, High Executor. Shall we discuss the specifics?" As the two delegations bent their heads together, hammering out the details of what would become known as the Earth-Zolthori Cooperative Accord, a palpable sense of history in the making filled the chamber. Outside the station, unbeknownst to those within, ships from a dozen different species had gathered, drawn by rumors of the unprecedented negotiations. As news of the accord began to spread, a ripple of hope washed across the galaxy. The age of unquestioned Zolthori dominance was over. A new era of galactic politics had begun, shaped by the indomitable spirit and cunning diplomacy of humanity. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, amid the countless stars and swirling nebulae, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what this strange new alliance would bring. A new galactic order. 5 years had passed since the historic Earth-Zolthori Cooperative Accord was signed, and the galaxy was a changed place. The grand chamber of the newly established Galactic Concord buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of species gathered for the first-ever Pan-Galactic Assembly. Ambassador Lyra Chen, now serving as Earth's representative to the Concord, stood at the podium, her silver-streaked hair and lined face a testament to the challenges of the past few years. Yet her eyes sparkled with the same determination that had seen humanity through its darkest hour. "Distinguished delegates," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall, "I stand before you today, not just as a representative of Earth, but as a symbol of what can be achieved when we choose cooperation over conflict, understanding over fear." Her gaze swept across the chamber, taking in the diverse array of beings. The crystalline forms of the Zolthori delegation sat alongside the furred Vexari, the gaseous nebulans, and a host of other species that, until recently, had never dared to imagine a galaxy where they could stand as equals. 5 years ago, many thought this day impossible. The Zolthori Imperium had ruled unchallenged for millennia. Humanity was seen as an upstart race, too volatile to be trusted with the secrets of the cosmos. And yet, here we are. A ripple of agreement passed through the assembly. Lyra continued, her voice growing stronger. "The road has not been easy. There were times when the accord seemed on the verge of collapse, but with every challenge, we found new strengths. With every misunderstanding, we deepened our commitment to dialogue." She gestured to the Zolthori delegation, where High Executor SCiFi sat, its crystalline form gleaming. Our Zolthori allies discovered that there was more to gain from partnership than from domination. They found in humanity not just an equal but a complement to their own strengths. SCiFi inclined its head in acknowledgement, a gesture that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. "And we humans," Lyra went on, "we learned the value of tempering our impetuousness with the wisdom of ages. We brought our creativity, our adaptability, our relentless drive to improve. And in return, we gained access to technologies and knowledge beyond our wildest dreams." The chamber was rapt, beams of all forms hanging on her every word. But perhaps the greatest achievement of the past 5 years has been the ripple effect of our alliance. As word spread of our cooperation, other species began to question the old order. They looked to the stars not with fear, but with hope. Lyra's voice took on a note of passion. "And that hope has led us here, to this historic gathering. For the first time in galactic history, we come together not as conquerors and conquered, not as masters and servants, but as equals, each of us bringing our unique strengths to face the challenges that lie ahead." She paused, letting her words sink in. Then, with a smile, she delivered the heart of her message. "Today, we lay the foundation for a new galactic order, one built not on fear and subjugation, but on mutual respect and cooperation. The Galactic Concord will serve as a forum for diplomacy, a platform for cultural exchange, and a united front against the true threats that face us all: the vast, uncaring universe itself. As Lyra spoke, holographic displays around the chamber lit up, showing images of joint human-Zalthori scientific expeditions, of mixed-species crews exploring the farthest reaches of the galaxy, of grand construction projects that dwarfed anything previously attempted. Already, we see the fruits of our labor. The Grandora Dyson swarm, harnessing the power of an entire star system. The Void Bridge, allowing near-instantaneous travel between galaxies. The Harmony Spheres, terraforming barren worlds into habitable paradises. These are not the achievements of any one species, but of all of us working in concert. Lyra's voice softened, becoming almost reverent. And yet we've only scratched the surface of what's possible. The universe is vast, filled with wonders and terrors beyond our comprehension. But together, united in purpose and diverse in approach, there is no challenge we cannot overcome, no mystery we cannot unravel. She straightened, her posture radiating confidence and hope. Distinguished delegates, honored guests, I invite you now to join me in ratifying the Charter of the Galactic Concord. Let us take this momentous step together into a future limited only by our imagination and our will to cooperate. As Lyra stepped back from the podium, the chamber erupted into a cacophony of cheers, applause, and various species-specific expressions of approval. The sound was deafening, a physical force that seemed to make the very air vibrate with possibility. In that moment, as beings from across the galaxy signaled their ascent to this new era of cooperation, Lyra felt a profound sense of awe. She thought back to that tense first meeting with the Zalthori, to the seemingly insurmountable odds they had faced. Who could have imagined it would lead to this? As the ratification process began, with each delegation formally pledging their commitment to the Concord, Lyra found herself standing next to Zixferis. The Zalthori turned its crystalline form towards her, its voice low and melodious. Ambassador Chen, I find myself experiencing an emotion I believe humans call pride, not in the Imperium's past achievements, but in what we have built together. Lyra smiled, genuine warmth in her eyes. I share that feeling, High Executor, and I can't help but wonder, what will we achieve in the next 5 years? The next 50? The next 500? Zixferis's form shimmered, a Zalthori expression of excitement. The possibilities are infinite, and for the first time in my long existence, I find that prospect exhilarating rather than terrifying. As they turned back to watch the proceedings, Lyra felt a surge of optimism. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be setbacks, disagreements, and challenges they couldn't yet imagine, but they would face them together. A united galaxy standing strong against the vast unknown. The age of isolation and fear was over. A new chapter in galactic history had begun, one written not by conquerors, but by allies. And at its heart stood humanity, adaptable, resilient, and ever reaching for the stars. As the last delegation pledged their support and the Galactic Concord officially came into being, a cheer went up that seemed to shake the very foundations of the universe. In that moment, every being in the chamber, from every corner of the galaxy, was united in a single thought. The future was theirs to shape, and it was brighter than any star in the cosmos.